Hello, everyone. I'm here with Sumedha Jaggi, an assessment professional with 4.5 years of experience in talent management consulting, especially psychometric and behavioral assessment, with a focus on hiring and leadership development and engagement, with most experience in psychological assessment at work. Thank you so much, Sumedha, for being here with us. And it's a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm sure everyone will love to hear and reflect with what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for having me here. And I hope I can add value and contribute to the mission and to the kind of goal and objective that Psychology at Work has. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor for us. So let's start with talking about psychometrics and behavior solutions. How do you deliver that in the workplace? It is just through feedback, or do you use another tool? Especially, I want to know about behaviors, because it is possible to know what kind of behavior works in some situations. Due to the complex world we live in, how can you work on that with an employee?
So when it comes to assessment at work specifically, there are two lines of assessment that I have most experience with. One is personality assessment, which is typically carried out by psychological assessments, including psychometric tools. These are in-house tools that a company develops on their own with their own capability and expertise. And there are also professional providers such as Hogan, that you might have heard, that also have expertise in providing psychometric assessments for different companies. The other aspect that I'm focusing more on since the past 8 to 10 months of my career has been in the space of behavioral assessments, specifically assessments that are customized for a client's specific requirement, their industry, their challenges, their experience, and it really involves understanding what the client is going through, what their strategy and vision is, and how we can create a custom behavioral assessment for them that really enables them to get to where they want to be. Now, when it comes to behavioral assessment, yes, this does include feedback. So it includes 180 and 360 feedback tools that help assess behaviors from different stakeholders that are involved with the person being interviewed or being assessed on. These include interviews, both structured and unstructured interviews. These include what's traditionally known as a situational judgment test or a case study analysis, which includes a hypothetical scenario that a person has to read through, and then they have to answer different questions. They have to choose their agreement or their rating based on different response options that are coded and sort of scored separately. And then they get an automatic feedback report based on that. This also includes some of the traditional assessment methods that used to be carried pre-pandemic in a face-to-face environment. Now they have been conveniently moved to the virtual space. So these include, for example, role plays activities, case study presentations, competency-based interviews. So these are different behavioral assessment tools that really help measure behavior in as much of an objective way as is possible. And it requires deep expertise of behavior, of psychology, of HR practices, and it's also based on the understanding that as much of behavior is observable, that's where it really adds more and more merit to the entire assessment process.
Yeah, and do you think it's possible in a world that we are changing with complex things? It's possible to measure this behavior, even though the people, the person or the group of people change this behavior in a small time.
Yes, so it's really interesting because behavior is something that is that can change over time, because we all go through experiences, we all go through learning, we all go through growth that inevitably changes our behavior over time. Personality is one thing that is harder to mold over time. It takes, you know, in the assessment world, we say we should not carry out another personality assessment at least within the same year, because one cannot really change their personality within the year. So behavior is something that often changes when one has, one reflects, when one is given feedback, when one goes through learning, when one goes through different experiences, when one goes through training programs. That's how learning can be, that's how behaviors can be changed and modified, and then can be also reassessed after a specific period of time. So one thing that I do in my job is conducting what's known as a pre-assessment and a post-assessment analysis. And we really try to understand and benchmark where people start in terms of their behavior and how much time has passed, let's say 3 to 6 months. And then we come back to the post-assessment period to really see, has there been any change in their behaviors? Have there been any change in their scores? Are people giving feedback in a different way about them? So definitely, if people go through periods of change, learning, training, and growth, there's a very, very strong case for their behavior to change over time.
Yeah, amazing. This is so interesting because you don't just assess do psychological assessment, but you also do like about post and pre assessment of the behavior and how the change. That is so nice. That is amazing. And we know that we cannot like measure the individual as a whole, even though we make psychological assessments, because all the person is more than one result on one test. So how to move between these two worlds in the work environment, from a psychological assessment to the worker in his complex or her complexity and completeness. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a very valid point that you bring up, Amanda, and this is something that we often tell our clients as well, that a psychometric report should not be judged at its face value, because these are just scores that have been computed, and as much as valid and reliable they can be, they should not be just considered as a sole source of input on a person's entire being. So what we always recommend is that it's important to supplement, for example, one type of a test with several different types of tests to really help enable a holistic understanding of who they are and what they bring to the table. So in the business terms, what we always recommend our clients is that never judge a selection process or a training process or a succession planning or a leadership development process just based on one assessment method. Always accompany and supplement behavioral tools with psychometric tools or psychometric tools with behavioral tools. Ensure that the person is going through an entire journey. Maybe they have coaching ahead of them, maybe they have peer mentorship ahead of them, maybe they have a whole succession plan ahead of them. That really involves more people, and the involvement of more people in their journey to really see, okay, these are the scores, this is how they performed in different assessment tools. We've had maybe 5 or 6 different types of assessments. We have this data on them. I've been noticing their behavior. I've been working with them closely. I've assigned them a peer or a mentor. And this is how we've observed their behavior and their performance over time. That's the best way of judging who they are and what their entire being can be. It simply should not be based on just one psychometric report or one behavioral report.
For sure. And Sumedha, about this topic, can you give me a concrete example, not like city names, not like that, but it's like that you see in the organization feel that need to be sustained, a situation, and then the consequent psychological assessment that you use for giving feedback, like feedback for this need that arises in the work field.
So if I understand correctly, you want that I give an example of maybe a situation we've had where we had to implement a certain type of an assessment and so we have a lot of clients with whom we do a lot of work around high potential identification. And we do a lot of succession planning, we do a lot of development programs, and typically what that involves is understanding what their exact need is. We want to hire someone, then we want to onboard someone, which will require a period of training, and then we want them to go through a period of leadership trainings or coaching, and then we want to make sure that we've really had, we've really got the best person that we could. So typically what that involves is a very thorough job analysis, which means understanding what competencies are relevant for this person who's the candidate in question. what job is it that they're recruiting for, what competencies are relevant for that job, what technical skills, hard skills, behavioral skills are relevant, is business acumen a part of that, and how do we define the behaviors that we are going to be assessing them on. So it typically starts with a very thorough job analysis of the candidate in question. Once we've completed that sort of competency model or a competency framework, we start using that as a blueprint to start creating the assessment. So that could involve creating a behavioral assessment like an interview. It could involve like creating a role play activity. It could involve an online situational judgment test, or it could also involve mapping the capabilities we have in the blueprint to a psychometric tool that we already use with an existing partner. So once we've created that matrix of what tools we have and what competencies we are assessing, we carry out the actual assessment center, so to say. And this goes on for weeks. This could go on for a 2-day process. It completely depends on what the client's convenience and availability is. And there could be 50 people going through the same process. There could be 10 people going through the same process. There could be different people across different levels in the organization going through this process. So once they complete that process, we get the results, whether that's in the form of a behavioral report or it's a psychometric report. Very often, we as consultants write behavioral reports. So sometimes I would also be involved in actually conducting the virtual assessment. So if there's a role play activity, I would be the role player. I would be asking them questions. I would be noting down their responses. I would be judging their responses and marking specific criteria. And based on that information, I write a very lengthy report on what I've observed. So once we have these reports of everybody, we try to discuss with the client. So who's meeting the mark? Who's meeting the benchmark? Who is it that is a complete no-no, who might not be a good fit for this company? Who's seeming to be a great fit for this company and its culture? Who's got the best scores? Who's showing the most potential? And once we have that sort of pool segregated, we then decide what the client wants to do with that, whether that could mean sending them for onboarding, sending them for leadership training, sending them for coaching. Then that goes on to a different part of the journey altogether. But basically what I've explained to you is how it starts with a thorough job analysis, the creation of assessment tools, the actual conduction of the assessment center, and then how we collate the reports and what we do with the reports and the analysis. And then how do we use that information to inform our decisions on selection, training, and development, and so on and so forth.
Incredible. Thank you so much for explaining and giving me this concrete example. And Sumedha, let's talk about now leadership. We know that development and engaging people who are open to this process in more accessible way are more easier than doing it in a hostile environment. So how do you develop and engage an autocratic leader or a person who are not open to have this training and to have this new development?
That's a very good question. And we often face this challenge with certain senior executives, right? People who necessarily don't want to undergo trainings, assessments. And there are some leaders who feel like they don't need to go through the assessment. They can simply skip that part and get right to the leadership training. I think it's an interesting mix of having a dialogue with the client, because very often the client that we converse with and we dialogue with is the HR or someone in the leadership team or someone in the development team. And it's a matter of having a dialogue with them. So how can this person be best convinced? How do we influence this person? How do we bring them to see the merit of going through this exercise? And very often we have to showcase to them our prior experience in conducting such kind of assessments and behavioral trainings. It often involves showing them some of our case studies of clients we've worked in a similar industry or a similar background. It also involves showing them what kind of quantifiable change we can bring to them and to their company, whether that's individual growth, that's personal growth, that's company-wide change, or it's company-wide growth, whether that's impacting their business objectives. So it's really a matter of making a case that not just touches on these quantifiable metrics, but also has some sort of a narrative around it, right? Some sort of a change story behind it, some sort of a reference of a client that who can back us on this. So it's a very meticulous process, and there does go on a lot of pitching, a lot of convincing, a lot of influencing. But I think we've been very successful, and I have had most success, at least in the past few months, few months of my career. Maybe when I was starting out, not immediately. Maybe that's the kind of exposure I didn't have very early on. But I think I can see I'm getting better and better at it.
Yeah, that's nice. It's what happened with all of us, right? We get into practice and we learn more and we develop ourselves also through the exercise of our professional. And about talent management, that I know that also is your topic, field of work. And we know that this topic has been a challenge over the last decades, and an appropriate one requires the focus on employees supported by three elements: the alignment between strategies, so organizational and talent, the identification of a talent, and also the talent management, that is the field. So I want to know, with your experience in that, how do you identify talent in organizations? Is this something that you have a lot, or you just have a few? Because we talk about a lot about talent and everything. So it's something that you really have like much or no? And also I want to know, how do you manage this talent in daily practice?
Yeah, that's a very, very pertinent question, and something that I guess it is a skill we are all developing, we are all refining. I don't think, you can be very senior and a huge expert at this and still get it right every time. So it's definitely, for someone like me who's just been in the industry for about 5 years, I think this is definitely an ongoing learning for me as well. But in my experience of being in the industry for the past 4.5 years, I think the whole talent management process starts at talent identification and defining the very clear requirement of what talent even means, right? Talent means different things for different people, for different organizations. Talent could be someone who's a great artist, but that's not very relevant in the business psychology space. So talent identification starts with really defining what talent is and customizing talent for different groups, for different units, for different business functions, for different teams, and really pinpointing on what is relevant for that talent in that moment, in that team. That's where the whole process starts. It's about really understanding, how can a person have maximum success in their role? What would they need to find success now and in the future? And it's not just about defining what their expectations, what their key roles, responsibilities, and the competencies expected of them are, but also knowing what are their goals and objectives. What do they want to do? What is their purpose? And ensuring that the company is also in a position to be able to align that with the individual's goals and needs. So it's not just a one-way process. It's definitely a two-way process in identifying the right talent. So you must have heard of something called culture fitment and culture fit. So talent also includes that, right? So is this person going to be a huge fit for our culture, and does this person seem like a good fit for what we have in the company and how we are in the company? So talent identification, I think, in the entire talent management process, identifying what is the right talent for us is the most crucial aspect, because after that it's just a very systematic process. So really identifying what we need, what our goals and objectives are, and where the company wants this talent to go. At the same time, understanding what the talent wants from the company and finding that alignment and that fitment is the most crucial aspect. And after that, it's just a matter of, okay, once we have these criteria defined, then we look for the right talent. We scout, we go to recruitment companies, we go to headhunters, we have internal job postings, we go to LinkedIn, and we post out this requirement for talent, right? And then we scout talent across the globe. I mean, I was working in India for the past 4 years, and I've just moved to the UK. So it's about being as open as you can about where you might find talent. Then it's about going through the whole recruitment stage, recruitment process, references, background checks, interviews, case study analysis. A lot of companies have different methods for how they want to recruit talent. And then it's about the offer stage, the onboarding, the introduction of employees to the entire organization. It's about initial trainings. It's about adjusting. It's about having a very good initial interaction with your manager, ensuring that talent is connected with the right kind of manager, and the manager is setting the right goals and objectives for the talent, is keeping a continuous track on their performance and their progress, is able to monitor, is able to give feedback. So it's about really ensuring that the talent is being set up for success from the very beginning, and has that process for them throughout their tenure at the organization. And then it's about, okay, if talent is lacking in a certain aspect, or if the talent is beginning to slack, how do we bring in the best measures? Do they require certain trainings? Do they require performance management? Do they require leadership development? Do they require on-the-job experiences? Maybe they need to move to a different part of the organization. Maybe they need a new manager. Maybe they need a peer-to-peer mentorship program. So it's about managing the talent's needs as they are during the organization. And if at some point the company and the talent mutually decide that this is just not working out, it's not the best place for them, then it's about conducting the right kind of talent exit process. So this to me defines what the entire talent management cycle looks like.
And it's so interesting. It's amazing, Sumedha. Are you giving so much insights for people? I'm sure that people who are listening to you are gonna enjoy it and disfruit a lot of it, because it's like all you said is like asking the right questions, right? So start to ask the question: what is talent for this work environment? What do we need? So exactly. This is important. And to finish our interview, it's sad because I'm enjoying a lot, but I have to ask you my last question for you. It's about your hiring process experience also. And I want to know what essential aspects that you think are crucial for students to show in the interview of a hiring process, like people who are starting the new career and everything.
That's wonderful. I think as someone who was not very long ago in that same position, and who's had a fair share of struggle in finding the right job and going to the right organizations, this question comes at a great point. So my advice would be, I think, networking. I cannot emphasize enough on the importance of networking. I mean, that's how you start understanding what the job market is like. That's how you understand what jobs are available for me. That's how you understand what could be out there for me. How do I learn about this? How do I understand what my field is about, to even land you in the right role? So sometimes people who are starting off struggle because they might not be applying for the right job. They might be in a rush to get to a job. They might be not very familiar with what the industry is like. So they might not find themselves the right job that they're applying for. And I've been there. So it's so important to talk to the people who've been there, done that, have the experience, have the knowledge, to make sure that you're applying for the right job. And once you've gotten to that point, it's about doing as much preparation as you can. It's about researching the company, understanding the company values, understanding what the company is about, what they do, what their mission is, what their strategy is, how many divisions they have, what their business structure is like. Because the last thing you want to do is land up unprepared for these interviews, because companies are going to want to understand how much research the candidate has also done on the company. So it's definitely about understanding what the company is all about and what value addition they are bringing to the company, and also being ready to present who they are, being their authentic self, describing their resume, their statement of purpose, whatever it is, just being very confident in what they've done without having to exaggerate or lie or anything like that, just bringing their authentic self. And if at all they are in the process that they have to go through a case study or assessment or something that requires working, then they should 100% commit to that, because a lot of companies, especially consulting companies, take pre-assessments very seriously. So it's also important to be as in preparation of that as much as you can, and really showing your best self. So my advice is, again, look for the right job, have the right resources, reach out to the right people, network, look for the right jobs on online portals, connect with your peers, and then just have enough knowledge on the company, on what your job experience is, what you're bringing to the table, and be prepared to tackle what they're bringing, and be prepared to ask questions. Are not in a place where interviews are only one directional. Companies are as much interested in being able to answer questions about themselves. So one thing that has really worked for me is to be able to ask company questions, potential hirer, about, questions about, okay, where the company is going, what is the company's future like, how does the company invest in professional development, how did the company navigate the pandemic time, and I don't know, whatever works for them. But yeah, be prepared to ask questions as well. So that really shows that you're really in the game.
Yeah, you said crucial points, because it's like you getting to know yourself to see a little bit what jobs could fit for you best, and then you start to study, going after sources and studying the company, and then asking the right questions also to the company. So be proactivity to it, not just be a passive person in the interview. And to finish, enjoy the whole experience and development that life could bring, right?
Absolutely. You summed it up so well, Amanda.
Sumedha, thank you so much for this interview. I have an amazing experience with you. I'm so glad to get to know you and your experience and your sharing. It was amazing, and I'm sure that you will help lots of people also to reflect in this such important topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
I'm gonna stop.